using social media, to not go on there and post stuff just to have followers, but actually remember, post with value, with the mindset that we're trying to build a community. In order to have community, we all have to be engaging, which means I have to be commenting, talking, and discussing, following the people who are listening to me.
Yes,
Then not
sir.
only that, taking it further, you're doing those things, and you're also an active community member online, and you're
Good morning, folks.
You're a community member, and as an individual, me and in Duluth, then taking that and whatever entity you represent, you're taking that and you're going to actually do stuff in the community, whether it be throwing events or collaborating with other businesses or family and friends and doing stuff in your community. And it's going to look different for whoever you are and what you represent and what your mission and vision is, or what business you own you're trying to do, but it's going to look very different. But like if we're not in our community actively involved doing stuff, and we're not online in that community where those people live in your community as well, where most of their attention is, doing those things at the same time, then I'm not optimizing community, and I'm not really focused on them. I'm focused on me versus we, and I'm not bringing the most value. So at the end of the day, community is, if you break it down, it's a common unity. It's a group of individuals that are together, that have a common goal.
Common goal,
They
or
have a
common characteristics.
common principles, a common mission, like football, like a football team. They're trying to win the championship
Every year.
If you're a militaries, a Navy SEAL group, you have top, high technical skills handling very dangerous missions. Those are your goals. If you're a business, your business should be a community in itself with the employees
Exactly.
that you have. It should be a very positive group that stand by the mission and vision of your business, and then they should be bringing that to the people outside of that, the customers, family and friends and associates in the community online, and you should be engaging with them, providing them value. And if you're just posting stuff online and never engaging, you're not building a community and you really don't care. So we'll talk about the importance of all that, and that's what leads to long-term connection and long-term community and long-term branding and loyalties, all those stuff. But the goal is long-term connection and long-term community.
Let's face it.
That's the goal.
In life, our most valuable tool and asset is our ability to connect to others and how you establish and build relationships. Because everything in life, as humans, we're intrinsically dependent on each other, whether you want to accept it or not. Everything in life, no matter, especially the people that are successful, like my brother said, especially once you go into business, this gets amplified, right? Because now when I'm in business, not only do I have a more impactful, my word carries more of an impact, my actions carry more of an impact, but I have a responsibility to build relationships and healthy relationships that are mutually beneficial. So I think that's a great point. That's why for me, once you realize this, I always correlate it back to business, because those are the people that should be held to the highest standard, who are making most of the money off of that community, who are benefiting from that community. So to me, I think it's a big deal. One of the things I think about is creative communication and consistent, healthy interactions. Because if you look at the steps of building a relationship, it's consistent, healthy interactions that lead to consistent, healthy communication that lead to that relationship, and that's the groundwork for a relationship. So that's why I think of creative communication as being one of the most important aspects of developing community, because to me, that is where you do a lot of the relationship building. Like in art, music, film, etc. All these are different forms of communication, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they're creative avenues where I think we should push more people to be creative. And that also forces us to judge people less, because you can't judge and critique someone's art. So that forces all these characteristics forward if we're looking at communicating in a creative fashion, because someone can't look at your art or your communications that are creative and be like, yo, that's wrong. Well, that just shows the whole problem there if they're saying your art is wrong. I think it's a really cool concept. I didn't realize it until we started we started our own clothing line, we started doing this. I was like, wow, this makes sense. It brings the whole problem to the forward into the stage when you're doing something that involves ambiguity and creativity, and then other people jump on that and say that's wrong. That's exactly the problem that we're facing, is people judging other people's ambiguities and differences and interpretations and perceptions and ideas, and then saying they're wrong and I'm right. I think that's really, really interesting once you see that.
Yeah, I want to bring it back to, though, when it comes to community, I think we need to focus on, it's consistent communication. Like, that's what it comes down to. From my experience in my personal life, any community that I've been a part of, that I'm engaged in, for example, the recovery community or exercise community, I am for me to have an impact and for people to know me and connect, I have to be consistently communicating and consistently bringing value. I have done this really well in my recovery. This is what makes me, that's why I'm still sober. I'm very well connected throughout the country in recovery communities, not just in Duluth, in the Twin Cities, in Hawaii, in Colorado. Like, whatever whatever community that I'm involved with, I have to be consistently communicating. So
Your screen should be down more on the top.
when it comes to,
There you go.
when it comes to online presence and trying to create community online, if I'm not consistently creating, consistently communicating, and engaging, then there's no chance of community. There's none.
None.
So I think that's the key that we were talking about this the other day with action, is just consistent action with being, taking these things builds community. I mean, I already noticed it, just like if I have, or when I'm posting, like when we have all of our channels and we're posting all the time on Instagram, it's, as we say, it starts to pop off.
Pop off.
There's a lot more people engaging because they can see the value that you're providing, and when you communicate back to them, it, like, there's energy, there's passion, inspires people, and that consistent communication is key for me to have any results. That's what I've learned. That's like the number one thing. And then
Trust and loyalty are built through that too.
yeah, and also in that process, through the communication, when we say communicating, it's not just speaking to your audience. Listening is just as important, and it's actually more important. I can speak as all I want to my audience, but I need to be open-minded to be able to see what they say. That's kind of the testing and measuring that my brother says. That's practicing the listening and open-mindedness, is pushing all this stuff out, speaking to my audience, being authentic, but then being able to step back and not let my ego get in the way and be like, okay, what are they saying back to me now? I need to listen to them just as much as I'm speaking to them. And the listening is actually more important, because you could be killing it speaking, but if you're not taking the time to listen to what your audience says and how it makes them feel, and listen to the market, as they say, or listen to the...
Exactly.
It doesn't matter. There's no way to actually know what they're saying. Like, I have to listen.
So that's the problem. Everyone's the bottleneck on the front end. What he's talking about is ego and the bottleneck on the front end. It's all a game of ego and bottleneck. What he's saying is so true. Like, 100% true. People all think egotistically they have the answer for what should be put out, Zaya, and then they don't let the audience or their people that are giving them their attention, they don't let their audience decide what has value. And that's exactly what you're talking about. And that comes back to being ego-free and authentic and vulnerable and real, which is what this is all about, and not being the bottleneck, and just connecting with your community and being less ego and more about collaboration and community and connectedness over ego and competition, and being more authentic and vulnerable, sharing your content in a vulnerable fashion, and then whatever does the best and has the highest interaction rate and does the most positive or has the most positive impact, you lean into. And the thing is, most people will never be open-minded to that. They just think egotistically that they know what should be made and what shouldn't be made. Communication.
That's what communication is. I can tell you, people that are poor with communication, they don't listen. It's, again, bringing it back to why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. We're designed to listen, and if I'm not listening, there's no connection. I can't connect to my audience via online or even in person if I'm not listening to what they're saying.
So true.
Nobody listens. If you listen, most people listen to reply.
Yep.
I myself do this sometimes.
So do I.
You have to be aware, this is auditing your thoughts, is like, oh my God, am I really listening to them and being open-minded and analyzing what they're saying? Or am I to instantly say something, getting emotional or ego, and not even thinking about what they're saying? I'm already closed-minded, knowing what I'm going to say in response. That's what most people do. We listen to reply, not listen to understand and connect. And when it comes to analyzing social media and our engagement with community there, like, we have to listen to understand and listen to connect, not listen to reply. Most people aren't even at that point. They're not even replying. They're just ignoring. They post shit and never communicate with. So we got the worst. The worst is people that post online and they don't even listen to reply. They just don't even listen. They post and they post and they post. There's no back and forth. Then you have people that post and they engage some, but their engagement rate isn't good because you can tell that they're not really listening or replying authentically to caring and listening to their audience and adjusting what type of content they put out, what they say. They're just doing that. And then the third is the best, is doing what my brother says, which is testing, measuring, putting out content, and authentically listening to what they say and reading the engagement rates, and then figuring out what they like and don't like, and then diving into more of that. So that's kind of like the 3 phases of this process that I think that needs to be done, and figure out where you are in that process. But the goal is always 3. But if your goal is in community, that's another issue too, right?
Right.
The goal in business is in community. I talked about this when we use the example of artists with like rappers, and you can use this with any famous person, or any business. If your goal is a community, you're not going to do these things.
Exactly.
So the mindset also should be like, when doing all this stuff, the goal should be community.
Always.
Always. Community development is not brought up enough within businesses in 2020.
It's the biggest failure there is right now, is the lack of leadership in the world, especially in America. Our lack of leadership, not only in politics, but business. Because there's people that are making hundreds of billions of dollars, they need to be giving back the most. They should I'm not saying, Bezos actually has done a pretty good job, and so has Bill Gates, but I agree with you. The challenge of business owners to give back more to the community. 100% agree.
Yeah.
Even the smaller businesses. Because if we start a business...
Any level should give back. It's going to be on a smaller scale, but it's just as important. How much money or time you donate is all relative. Like, if you're only a 6-figure business and you can only afford $2 or $3 grand a year towards community development and putting that money and time into something, that's still amazing. That's still 3% of your revenue.
But let's face it, business owners, your life, whether you're a self-employed entrepreneur or you're a business owner, communication becomes even more crucial, like he just said, not only on the community level, but just day-to-day functioning level. Because let's face it, the number one most important factor in business is obscurity. Obscurity is your number one enemy. So to get out of obscurity, you need to have communication and you need to gain attention. And the best way of doing that for the cheapest amount of money is online, and leveraging your online presence and sharing your story in a creative fashion. But the key is, most people don't even know what their story is. The biggest thing for me is learning what my story I want to share is. And for my personal...
Your mission and your vision.
Exactly. My mission is to connect, is the number one tool is to use the written word, the photo, and the video to share a powerful, authentic story so that people can connect via emotions. So it's trying to connect and cut to people's emotions and connect to the culture, and do so at the intersection of culture and attention. And that's exactly what we do here at We Are in Media. We use the photo, the written word, and the video, and the 3 different forms of audio and all the different forms of media to do so. And maybe one day it would be great if we could start a movie crew and do creative communication through the movies and all this stuff. That's all forms of communication. But ultimately, it comes down to trust, developing trust, loyalty, and awareness, and doing that via vulnerable, authentic storytelling. Because that's how people realize, oh, this person's not here faking it or flaking it or just trying to manipulate me. And then instead of selling people, I ask. I give, develop connections, relationships, and give, and then I ask, and then people will support you. It's so much more beautiful than trying to manipulate someone. Instead of trying to manipulate them, you just give, and help people, and help be constructive and build community and awareness and trust, and then simply ask. It's just so much simpler. But I think it's really interesting how few business owners actually know the story they want to tell. It's really interesting. I'll ask a business owner, what's your story you want to tell? And they don't even really know what they want to share or tell the world. It's really interesting.
Yeah, that's branding. Any business should start off with, I think that's a problem. Again, that's just mindset. When they start a business, they're like, well, we're going to open up a restaurant or a bar. Okay, cool. But the mission and vision always need to be bigger than just that.
Always. So true.
If you're just focused on the micro, your products and services.
Just trying to sell booze to people.
That's the problem. A lot of people are focused micro with their business, just what product or service they offer, which is cool. You need the basics and practicality of what you're doing. But in order to distinguish yourself or separate yourself, it's always, what is your mission and vision? Again, Apple has branded themselves the best way. That's why people will buy your product, or they'll choose to give you their hard-earned money or time, is because they're believing in you. There's millions of products and services. There's millions of product or services out there today. What separates people in businesses that give you their money has little to do with the technical thing. It's not because this iPod has this little gadget or that little gadget or that little gadget or that little gadget. Like, that's irrelevant. There's so much good technology. What chooses me to purchase something from a product, it's about the story. It's about the mission and the vision. And I feel like when I purchase that product, that's what I'm contributing to. That's what I'm standing for. And if someone doesn't know their mission and vision statement, then you really don't know who you are. How the hell are you supposed to communicate that to the audience? So a lot of that, like my brother says, starts with the auditing of like, why are you doing what you're doing? Simon Sinek wrote a book called Start with the Why.
So I just want to go back.
Start with the why. If you don't know your why, that you can't explain
The
in
who,
one,
the what, the when, the where, the why.
just the why actually. If you break it down, he breaks it down to just the why. All that other stuff is important, but the why is a statement that you should make in 1 to 2 to 3 sentences. That's it. It should be a powerful statement that represents who you are and your brand. Could be multiple brands that you should explain to someone the second they meet you, that they're gonna know who you are. It's not gonna be like, I make t-shirts. You're gonna say, I change the world and make people laugh every day through funny messages on clothes. Bam! See how that's different than someone says, well, I operate a t-shirt company that sells t-shirts that has cartoons on it, and we operate out of Duluth. Like, you want to make a statement that's bigger. So like my brother, he has a statement with Weirman Media, what it represents, before we get into any specifics, before he says we're a business strategy or a media company. Like, he's talking about how he wants to create community and connecting through the photo, video, and written word, and bringing humanity forward. So it's like, that's what I'm talking. That's it. Like, that's the core issue. If you don't have that, how are you supposed to communicate that to your audience?
Yeah, just really interesting. And then I think that's such great stuff, but I want to go back just slightly and talk about the characteristics that lead to, so like, to me, I think of some of the most important things in life is our ability to commune with others. And despite their religion, their sex, their background, their political views and opinions, is our ability to commune with others. And I shout out to Hostel du Nord, that's part of their mission statement they talk about, is our ability to commune with others despite their political views, their opinions, their religion, their sex, and their background, and their color of skin. And by doing that, if you think about it, one of the key characteristics to building community is open-mindedness and willingness to connect with others. And I think in order for us to have this community development, we do have to start there with openness and open-mindedness and humility and lack of ego, because that's what leads to that. Ultimately, if we don't want to commune with others and connect with others, we never will have this happen. So I just think some of the key characteristics that we can look at for communication and community is open-mindedness, humility, lack of ego, and just authentic, vulnerable storytelling and being true to who we are and our experiences. And by doing that, we open up and we connect with others and we develop community and relationships. So I think that's a really key, some of those characteristics. Don't you, Zaya, like openness and like authenticity and vulnerable and lack of ego and lack of competition?
Yeah, I think those characteristics are always good to bring with you no matter where you go. Amazing, you need that. But at the end of the day too, it doesn't matter if you have that. If you're not on the same page, your team, your business, and the people you engage with will never be on the same page if you don't have a mission vision statement that you can explain the principles and values, what you represent. I'm telling you right now, the reason why my recovery works is because I'm around people and we know our mission, our vision.
Common goals.
There is no way that'll work. And then
they all have common
we're
goals.
going to break this down even more. As a business owner, you're the leader that's responsible for building that within your employees.
100%.
If you have a culture in your business that doesn't have the same thing like that, then you won't effectively get that to your audience. So it goes back.
And you can't scale it either, because you can't scale something that doesn't have culture.
No, so it really goes. I mean, this book is super powerful. Simon Sinek wrote, "Start with the why."
Start with the why.
And it should be reminded every day. It should be reminded every day. Like when you're gonna, like, you need to have that. Like,
thanks for listening, folks.
When you're on teams, like when I'm around teams, when I'm on committees, and I'm in, like, say I'm in committees for service work and doing recovery, I have to remind people, hey man, this is the principle here that we're following. This is why we're here. Keep that in the front of our mind, because it reminds you of what you're doing, and it makes your focus on what you should be giving your attention to really easy, and it makes you realize what you need to do really easy. It makes it all so clear. Anytime we get confused or emotional and ego and the things that my brother talked about that can get in the way, you can kill that by bringing it back to the why in that moment and reminding everyone why we're doing this, what is our mission, vision, why we represent, and it creates a clear focus of where your energy should go. If you don't have that map and that mission and vision and those principles and that values, you're going to wander off. Even if you have the best ego-free team, you're not going to get the results because you don't even know what the hell you're communicating and what you represent. So like that is the core, and that is probably one of the biggest statements. And then like my brother says, you need to be able to use stories to bring that in with your personal experience and stories, because a lot of that stuff right there is a result of your experience that's made you who you are and represented that, and that's why you are passionate enough to make this business.
Exactly.
So that's awareness, is be able to audit all that stuff, realize what I've been through that's inspired me to make a product or service, combining with those things to give to someone.
So I think that's really cool what he talked about is a mission. It's a group of people that have a mission, purpose, and direction and a strategy to get there. And ultimately, it comes via sharing commonalities and by sharing our stories and experiences, because then we find similarities and common ground.
Yep.
So if we have that mission, purpose, and direction and strategy to get somewhere as a group and as a team, it requires us to be vulnerable and authentic by sharing our stories so that we all can come together and connect and be a team. And I think that's really cool, because if you think about most businesses, people, places, or things, they're lacking mission, purpose, direction, and strategy. And I think one of the things we can do with the community is bring that to our people. If we start to come together as a team and start to unite, and we start to come and work together for the same common purpose, mission, strategy, and to go to the same direction, we then can start to bring those values to the people that are lacking that. And a lot of people, if you think about it, in our communities are lacking direction, purpose, mission, and strategy, and how to get where they want to go, or don't even know where they want to go. So I think that's a really interesting point, and I think it's crucial how you brought in the experiences with it all. But ultimately,
whether people are aware of that or not, that's what it is. Like, whether you're aware of all this,
your stories are most powerful.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, my brother's right. So it's like, whether you're aware of that, the realization is, and this is my realization, that how I became to define all those things was through all of my personal experiences in my life that I've been through. That awareness, me auditing, and really it just starts with, okay, asking myself, what do I really want? What do I really represent? What do I really believe in? So like, it started with me to do all that, and then these things came up, and then you bring them together with a brand or a product that represents you, and it's all an extension of you. And this is what personal branding or leadership branding is.
Exactly.
Is recognizing that you are a part of it, the brand, just as much as the logo and business, and that it's an extension of who you are and what you represent. And without sitting down and doing that, you'll never know. Like, that's one of my favorite things. Like, I learned about this in college. It was business communication. It's one of the best courses I ever took in college, by the way. It was business communication, like 301 or something. It's by far the most communication, because we communicate, but it really talks about business communication. And it talks about all this stuff right here that we're talking about in the class. It's really awesome. And if you look at the best people that have mastered this, in 1 to 2 to 3 sentences, they can effectively give you a very powerful statement that will cause you to stick out in the crowd. Whether you're speaking to a large audience or speaking online, you'll have that why statement, and it'll be like, wow, it'll catch the audience. It's really powerful. And then you dive into the micro product services and all this other stuff that you do.
Exactly.
But you have to lead in with
a big why.
With the why, and that why needs to incorporate a story. It needs to incorporate your personal experience in your life and what created you to do this. That is what the most powerful thing is. Like, you hear all the time, and sometimes it can be salesy. At the same time, this is not a sales pitch. You don't want it to seem a sales pitch. You want it to be authentic. I'm not talking about an elevator pitch. I'm talking about you telling a story, a vulnerable story. It could be like, I watched my brother die from overdose, and now you could use that story. It could be someone whose brother or family member died from overdose, and that inspired them to create an organization, a nonprofit where they're fighting heroin overdose. Like, you want to use stories like powerful pitfall stories, and then incorporate that with who you are and how that changed you to make this product. Right? That's what my brother says. It's the stories, it's personal stories, it's raw, vulnerable, and authentic. And that's how you catch people. That's authenticity. And that's how you lead into then what you're doing.
And what he's talking about is crucial, folks, because once you realize it, it's called a net gain, right?
Yep.
If you lean into everything that you do, people think, if I share my history of this something that was bad or a shortcoming, people aren't going to want to work with me. But guess what? Just as many people that won't will. So like, if my
it's actually going to be way less that won't.
Exactly. But at the same time, everyone's worried about it. But if I share my story and I say I'm a former drug addict, heroin user, and now I don't use heroin anymore, I'm in recovery from heroin, then ultimately I'm gonna have people that say, "Oh, I'm not working with him," but then there's gonna be just as many, if not more, that will say yes. And if I share my brain story surgery, there's gonna be people that say yes more than no. So ultimately, everyone's running away from their authentic profile and differences, and it's your most powerful tool. It's what you would lean into to develop those authentic relationships and be vulnerable and share your story and share the truths of your life, and then you're gonna, in the end, benefit the most from it. And it's the most powerful tool. Like my brother said, leadership branding is the most fluid form of business, because now you can lean into anything. If I wanted tomorrow, I could start a soap business, or I could start a hat business, I could start a clothing business, I could start a tile service. But at the end of the day, it's me. So it's the most fluid, flexible form of business, and it's the future, especially with artificial intelligence coming and so forth, because human traits and human stories are going to be even more valuable and be more important. But ultimately, one of the biggest things that stops all this from happening is ego, ladies and gentlemen. Ego leads to the bottleneck on the top end of business. The majority of businesses have a structure where the CEO, CMO, or whatever, COO, and at the top, their ego gets in the way, and they think they know what should be done at every level of the business, and they're not letting the audience decide. And in the Scrum model that we helped develop the Weirman X model and the S effect from, one of the characteristics in that is they talk about how the CEOs and the high-ranking officials within the business a lot of times block the creativity and letting the audience decide what is made and what's released and what's done, because they egotistically play the bottleneck on the top end. And that's usually the biggest obstacle to all what we're talking about is ego, whether it's in business or life or community connection in the natural community. It's ego. It's more self over we. It's more I over me. It's like me versus we, and it's a big deal.
Yeah, and I think the goal, again, to bring us back to simply like community development should be the goal.
Yeah,
so
we have to get out of ourselves for that to happen.
We're talking about all this, and if your goal is in community development, you're not going to do any of these things. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen if you're not in that mindset. None of this will happen if you're not in the mindset of community development. That's just my experience, in my opinion, because that means you're focused on yourself and your selfish wants. So selfishness, which is rooted in ego, has to be removed. That if you're going into business for selfish reasons, and there's nothing wrong with making money.
No.
And I'm not saying you shouldn't make money, but
it shouldn't be objective.
Businesses that fail, 95% of them, like my brother says, it's probably because they're selfish. If you approach things selfishly and you're always providing value.
Insurgent.
I just believe the spiritual principle that if you do that, like every time in my life when I wake up every day, if I bring service and value, my needs are always met. So I believe if you run a business, just like in my individual life, where I wake up and I stop running things selfishly, what I want, when I want, I believe businesses will thrive with this mindset. I don't see businesses failing. Any business can fail with the wrong hire, the wrong situation, but in general, what we're describing is a very beautifully mindset and model that can make a business thrive because it's rooted in community, and therefore your business is supported by the community.
Yep.
The business is supported. Businesses fail because they're not getting support, aka revenue or customers. They're not supporting you with money because they don't think you're valuable enough to give them your money and time. But if you promote things community-driven with development and selflessness, you're going to connect and you're going to have people that support it. Therefore, your business will be sustainable through the community. And you can see this so often. And I just don't think any business long-term will survive, especially in today, because we have such hyper-aware people because of technology and information.
It's becoming, actually, let me interject.
It's
becoming more important than ever to be a brand that people can trust and believe in.
Yeah, it's not like 50 years ago where you could hide shit behind.
You can't hide anything.
Salesmen and like everything is so transparent. With like, let's just look at Google reviews and Yelp reviews.
Right, dude.
They didn't have that shit 20, 30 years ago. I can go online, like this is what makes Amazon so good. Like Amazon, I can look at 20 products and I can click on their reviews and look at all the reviews, how authentic they are. I can look at the photos. I can analyze that product and what it represents. Then I can click on it and go to their website and look at them even more before I even send them $1. So if that company isn't doing these things, I can sniff it out. Intelligent, informed, educated consumers will sniff you out. And it's like, and this is more fun.
This is so true, dude. This
But
is such
so,
a big topic.
Like
that he's talking
that's
about.
why I think, again, you can't hide it anymore. If you don't do this, you will die. I really believe this. This is like I believe this in my personal life. I believe this so much in my personal life that it's a no-brainer when I'm doing business that I have to do this. I do this individually every day, just as an individual. Let's just say I'm not even thinking about business. I'm just like talking to my friends and family, and I'm just like being me. I know I have to communicate and bring value to the community that I'm in as an individual, or I don't connect and I don't sustain myself in that community. That's my experience. So I know that it has to be the same thing when it comes to business. So this is about survival, really, at the end of the day, more than anything.
Sustainability.
Yeah, it's more about sustainability, and you can't manipulate the consumers. They're becoming more educated and more aware and more connected than ever. So it's really almost impossible now. I mean, you can still manipulate.
Such a great point.
You can still manipulate, but you can already sniff those people and can tell that they're not thriving right now.
So what you're talking about, Zay, is so big. What he just touched on is so much value there. He's talking about a time where he's right. It's everything. The truth comes out more than ever. You can't hide it anymore. It's all there. Like there's so much access to information and insight and knowledge and people's stories that it's there. People can find it.
Yeah, even fake reviews, you can sniff those out.
So it's become more crucial than ever to be a business that does good and uses your platform and business to do good. Because the customer and the consumer, if you lose their trust,
You're
trust
done.
is the most valuable tool, and if you lose it, you're done.
Done.
You're done. There's businesses, you can see them, that have collapsed overnight because they had some kind of credit card scandal. They had some kind of, like, airline had an issue and their stock plummets.
Or individual brands, leadership brands with men that are sexual assaults.
So let's face it. So this is what we're talking
Sexual
about.
assaults with women.
So the consumer,
Sexual-
if the best way to bring power to the consumer is to educate and bring them insight and perspectives on things, because listen, the consumer is being manipulated. What he's talking about is true. It's never been better as far as the consumer being aware and awake, but at the same time, it's never been worse.
They're still getting manipulated.
Because they have access to everything, like he said, but at the same time, the consumer is moving so fast and is addicted to speed that they're still being manipulated by these big businesses and big pharma.
Because they make it so easy.
Because they're playing into their addiction to friction-free processes and services and solutions. So then they just prey on that and they manipulate. They're not
And a lot of those things are physically addicting.
100%.
Fast food, pharmaceutical drugs,
comfort and sustain, exactly.
consumerism with shopping on Amazon.
So that's why it becomes.
It's addicting, dude. It is.
It's such a big topic, though. Being a business or brand that wants to do good, and on the front end, bring value to the consumer, because that's where if we optimize the consumer, then and you bring them awareness and perspective, they're not going to give their money to those businesses that are manipulating them. So then all of a sudden those businesses will start to go out of business incredibly fast. And that's another part, and one of the legs of why we do what we do here is to bring insight and perspective to this, because then the consumer might stop giving their money to that company that's fucking them at the end of the day. Like they're just being screwed over by that company. They're just giving them their money and they're buying something, and at the end of the day they're broke, they're empty, and they're living beyond their means fiscally, and they have all these debts, liabilities, and obligations, and they're unhappy and they're miserable and they're stuck in their situation because they can't have control of their money, their time, or their energy because they're living beyond their means. So I think that's a really big topic. That's really cool that you
it's
brought
all
that up.
it's all under the same thing.
It
Community.
is.
It's all under
Because if you don't care about your community, you will do that.
Yeah.
But if I'm making money off my community, I naturally care. Like right now, Women Media is not making a ton of money, but we're getting by and we're making enough to be okay. But ultimately, once we start making more money, it's just going to scale this process. Because we truly, that's what the whole brand of Women Media
Yeah,
is
but that's
about.
a big issue that all of this is rooted. Again, this is one thing with capitalism that I think the mindset with capitalism.
Thanks for being with us, folks.
Is this is all removed because people feel like they need to start generating a shit ton of revenue and scaling super quickly.
Which is the issue.
Which is the issue, because that mindset removes your ability in rooted in doing this. So it's like, and we're not saying you shouldn't make money or scale, but it shouldn't be so quickly. Again, that's like a business owner who's addicted to friction. That business owner is addicted. They need to realize that you build something that takes time, a little sweat equity. It doesn't mean you shouldn't make money or scale, but if you're trying to do it so fast that you need to leverage a bunch of money that you're borrowing, or you need to leverage all this stuff to sell a bunch of shit to people right away versus giving, then you're running a model that's just not driven in community development
Or sustainability.
Yeah, so it's like that might mean a couple years of lower revenues and doing all these things.
Sweat equity.
But that's okay. Like, what's fucking 2 years of your life to still have a day job or whatever else that you're doing to make more money on the side while you're building a brand?
And something you believe in.
That's the key. Like, if we weren't doing this, we would be focusing on finding a bunch of people just to start selling $2,000-$3,000 media packages to and really start pumping out.
But really, I don't want to have to work with those people. I don't want to force that.
Yeah, so that's a big issue. But to kind of sum it all up, then, because we can't go on, I gotta head out of here in the next 10 minutes or so. But I really think the two major points that my brother and I talked about here is one, the number one thing related to the growth steps. It starts with auditing and doing an inventory with those principles of your why, your mission statement, and who you are, and your experience and your stories, and being able to sit down and write that out and be able to communicate what that is that has inspired you to create this business. And then two, how you do that is where the attention and culture is via online, and then via in-person in your communities as well as online, by bringing value through photo, video, written word, as well as community development events in your community, combining all of that and having a strategy where you're engaging, listening to understand, and following your engagement and following your people and listening to them, and then adjusting what you say and do to bring more value to them on a daily basis. To me, that is the essence of community development. And then also making sure that you're giving and giving and giving and giving and giving before you ask. And even when you do ask, you're making sure that whatever you give to them, that they're giving you money for in exchange, has more value than what it's worth. So even when you're asking for something, you want to make sure that value that they're getting is even more worth than what you're asking for. That way, we're always giving. I could sell something to someone that's, I could sell, a $20 T-shirt to someone, but that could be worth $40 or $50, and what it represents could even have more value. Or if you're selling someone $1,000 package to manage their media, that could be worth $5,000. What you're doing for them in their business and their community. So it's like even when you ask, you're still giving in that sense.
Yeah.
That's the key, and it's rooted in, like my brother says, spiritual principles of giving, spiritual principles of listening, scientific principles of testing and measuring, and removing ego. And just like with removing ego and going at it with a positive mindset of bringing value to the world and moving humanity forward. That's what I have to represent. That's my sum up for everything. And I'll let my brother sum up what he thinks are the main 2 points that he thinks he wants to explain and on the situation.
I think that's a great summary, Zaya. I think it's a great episode. I think it's great conversation and dialogue to have and move forward. Having all the episodes that we've had, having dialogue on these concepts and ideas, but ultimately everything that I believe in, that we believe in, and that I'm doing at Wierman Media is about propelling businesses, brands, or individuals and ideas to the intersection of culture and attention. Because ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, whatever you're doing, if you want to start to get traction with it or develop some kind of idea, solution, service, or concept, you need to be able to bring that to others and share that with them in a powerful, authentic fashion, no matter what it is. So if you're in business or you just have an idea or a concept or a belief or something you want to bring forward to others and share with others that you believe has value, you need to do so at the intersection of culture and attention, because that's where you develop trust, awareness, and brand loyalty and community development. And it's done via powerful, authentic storytelling. And the only way to do that is by having consistent, regular interactions, which lead to consistent, regular communication that builds those relationships. That is not, relationships can't take place or occur without consistent, healthy interaction and consistent, healthy communication. And in 2020, it's never been easier to do so via creative expression and creative communication on the top 7 main channels in social media. So Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, Instagram are all channels of attention and communication that you can creatively share your story. And that's what we're about at Wierman Media. And whether you want to do that or not, it's up to you, but that's ultimately what we're about at the end of the day. So it's not right, it's not wrong, it's our perspective. Wierman Media.
I think it's always good to challenge someone at the end here.
Totally.
Simplify things. I think people remember always. People, they say, I don't remember what class I learned this in, whether it was any type of performance, whether it's music or speech, people usually remember like your first minute and your last minute. The first minute and last minute. A lot of it in the middle is forgotten.
First minute, last minute.
Yeah, it's really powerful. So at the end, I just like to challenge you, whatever it is that you're doing, to apply an audit of like, who am I, what I represent, what is my mission and vision, and then maybe figure out how you can be better at community development in your community. Whether you're a business owner or an individual, I'm sure you have something you're passionate about that you could create some entity that you represent. Or
100%.
Or join another entity already created that really represents what you love. Join them and be part of that. So that's what I challenge you is to be more, to take this stuff we're talking about. I don't care how you do it, whatever way you want to do it, but do something with community development and engage and it can look like a lot of different things. My deepest challenge is to have you do it yourself and create your own entity, whether it's a nonprofit organization or some business or whatever it is. Create it, build it, and they will come. If you feel like that's not you, then I would suggest the second best thing is finding an entity that already exists that you can go join and be a part of that's doing this. And if you like what we're doing here, well, we are welcome to join our team at More Love Nation, Women Media.
And we have more stuff coming.
You know, even if it's just as a volunteer, like we're trying to build community. I'm about community. If anyone's so that's what I'm going to challenge for you out there is to do something like that. What can you do to be more part of the community? We're not here to judge. As much as I do and my brother may do, we could always be better and do more. So it's not about who does more and who does less. It's not like an ego thing, like people do more. There's always someone out there who does more community development and does better stuff, and there's always people that do less. I'm just challenging you, how can you be better? The Mamba mentality is a constant quest to be better every day. That's the Mamba mentality, a constant quest to be better every day. So I'm challenging you to be better today than you were yesterday when it comes to community development.
That's a great challenge, Zay, and I think that's a great point. How you start and how you finish is key. It's like, that's a great point. That's like about how if you fall down and you mess up, it doesn't mean that's in between. How you get up and how you finish is what matters. So love it or hate it, we appreciate your attention. Once again, you're at Women Media, your attention is our oxygen.
Thank you guys for listening. Follow me at Isaiah Soul.
Thanks for tuning in, folks.
More Love Nation, Women Media.